Okay, welcome everybody to our webinar, which is all about early years initial teacher training. So this webinar is for anybody who is interested in finding out a little bit more. You might already have your application in, or you might have some questions that you want to ask me at the end. Please feel free to pop questions in the chat box as we're going along, but I will come to those when we get to the end of the session. We'll have time for a Q&A. Okay, so what's early years teacher status all about? So this is the status for you if you're really enthusiastic and passionate about the early years, because this is about becoming an expert in the very youngest age ranges, right from birth through to 5 years. So we're very much focusing on the younger age groups and the EYFS. What I do want to make sure is that people are clear on the difference between qualified teacher status, or QTS, how that differs to early years teacher status. So you do need to have qualified teacher status if you want to be able to work in a maintained school. You have to have that because it's one of the points in the statutory guidance in order to lead teaching in those age groups. With early years teacher status, you can lead on early years practice across those early years age ranges, as well as in reception class if that's an academy or if it's a free school. What's really nice about this status, if you join on the graduate employment-based route, so if you're already working in an early years setting or school, you've got that benefit of having the support of your employer alongside studying at the same time. But it's really good news for whichever route you choose, because whether you decide you're on the graduate entry route or the employment route, you can train for free on both of those routes. So this programme is fully funded by the DfE and therefore it doesn't cost you anything to undertake the status. It's going to really help you to get the most up-to-date subject knowledge around everything in terms of early years. So best practice strategies for working in those age groups and to really, really deepen your knowledge and understanding in the different areas of the curriculum. Something that people always say to us when they get to the end of the programme is that it's really helped to develop their leadership skills. So there are certain things that we do throughout the programme which will help you to develop your confidence, help you to work more effectively with your team, or to take on an aspect of leadership. But our main aim, as you can see at the bottom, is really about increasing and improving that support for all of our children and families that are in that early years age range. I'm sure some of you will have seen just this week, we've had a new document that has come out called Giving Every Child the Best Start in Life. That's part of the new strategy from the government. And there are lots of things in there about raising that status of early years educators. And that's very much what we want to do at Best Practice Network. And you can obviously help with that in terms of taking your status. So some of you might be thinking, why do you want to train with us? Obviously, you can undertake early years teacher status with a number of different providers, and that is, of course, your choice. I'm really proud to say to you today, though, that we are the biggest provider of EYITT. So we deliver EYITT all across the country. We currently have 2 cohorts that are running each year, so you've got some flexibility in terms of when you join. And we have an absolutely fantastic team. Everybody who works with me on the programme is an early years expert themselves. Many of them still work in early years settings or have worked in early years settings recently. So they are bringing with them a wealth of expertise and knowledge to support you on your journey to get early years teacher status. It is a blended programme, so there are some elements that are online, but there are also lots of face-to-face elements. So as I talk you through the slides, you'll see that you've got lots of support to help you along the way, including some regular visits from a personal tutor from Best Practice Network as well. So this is a nice little diagram which will explain the 2 different routes which I mentioned at the beginning. So you can see at the top, we've got our graduate entry route, or GE route for short. So this route is for any of you who are not working, not employed in an early years setting or school at the moment. So this again is fully funded by the DfE. And on this route, you can be eligible for a bursary of up to £5,000. So for example, if you have a master's or a first degree, you are eligible for that top level. If you have a 2-1, it's £4,000. And if you have a 2-2, it's £2,000. In terms of placement, you've got to do a minimum of at least 120 days on placement. And that's to make sure that you get to spend time across all of those different age ranges from birth through to 5. And that's why we class that as full-time training. Because you're not employed in a setting, the majority of your time is going to be spent in those different early years age groups, gaining that experience, being able to observe and work alongside other early years teachers. On both of the routes, you can see that we have monthly training days, which are led by my team. So again, you have the option of going to a face-to-face training group, or you can choose to join online. So the second route that you can see on the second line is our graduate employment-based route, or GEB route for short. So this is for anyone who is employed already in an early years setting or school. Again, it's fully funded by the DfE. And for this route, you also have a little bit of a boost in terms of your employer supporting you to get the status. So your employer is eligible for a £7,000 employer incentive payment. And this payment will come across to your setting. It's split into monthly payments, and it's there to help your setting to cover any of the costs. For example, if you're out on placement, they'll be able to buy a supply staff in to cover you. Placement looks a little bit different on this route. Because you are employed in an early years setting, you can, of course, cover lots of the age groups in your home setting where you work. So typically on here, you can see that it's usually a 25 to 30 day school placement or second placement that you might have to do outside of your own setting. And we class that as part-time training because, of course, you're working, whether that be part-time hours or full-time hours, alongside studying. If anybody is confused between the routes or you've got any questions, it's really good to go on our website. If you go on bestpracticenet.co.uk, there's some frequently asked questions about the different routes on there, which might help you as well. So a little bit more in terms of what the programme looks like and what it'll feel like to you if you decide to put your application in. So, as I said, for the training days, you have a choice. We know that some people really, really like to be with other people and they work best when they're in a room, they can share ideas and they can develop those relationships together. If that's you, you can choose to go to a face-to-face group. We tend to run those in lots of our main cities. So, for example, this year we have groups that are running in Bristol, London, Newcastle, Leeds, Birmingham, Nottingham, for example. We also have a range of online groups. So if you prefer to join online, and that's what suits you best, you can opt into one of our virtual groups and join your group online. We do have an online platform that we use, which is called Mosaic. So when you start the course and you're perhaps writing up some of your teaching plans or you've been assessing the children, then you will start to upload your work onto Mosaic. It's a really user-friendly system. We can all access it together. So for example, your mentor in setting will be able to see it. Your personal tutor will be able to see it. I can check on it and see it. So we're all working on that together. You will be given a personal tutor from Best Practice Network who's there to support you all the way through the programme. So they will be your main support. They will arrange to meet you really early on online to say hello. Then they'll arrange to come out and see you in your setting, whether that be your employed setting or whether that's a placement. And they'll come to visit you at least 5 times across the programme. And in between that, you can contact them whenever you need support. There'll be lots of opportunity to email, lots of opportunity to join one-to-one calls online with them if you need any help. We do also ask that you choose somebody, if you're employed in a setting, to be your lead trainer. And this person is really going to be there to make sure that you can go on your training days. You will get your study time that you need to be able to complete your work. And again, they're there to help you to organise your placements and make sure that you get the opportunity to go out to a different school or a different setting in order to achieve the status. You'll also choose somebody in your setting or on placement who's going to be your mentor. So we'll talk about the mentors a little bit in a moment, but that tends to be somebody like the reception teacher if you're in school. It could be a deputy manager, it could be a manager, it could be a room lead if you're in an early years setting. And their main role is to observe you each week and to give you some feedback on your practical teaching. The really, really nice thing about the program is that whilst we have the same standards to work towards, it's very, very individual in terms of what is right for you. So I know on the call today, we will have people that are coming with very, very different experiences. We may have some people that have been working in early years for 25 years. They might be the designated safeguarding lead. They might be the Senko. We'll equally have people who have never stepped into an early years setting before. So it's very much an individual journey that we plan for you based on what you tell us at the start, based on your own reflection, your own experience, and what kind of needs you're bringing with you at the beginning. And that means we can offer you the right support, but equally, we can also give you appropriate challenge if we really, really want to push you a little bit further. This is a nice little diagram that again you will find on the website, and it hopefully just gives you a visual overview of what the full program looks like. So everybody, if you're successful, starts in our induction phase. And during that induction, it's all about welcoming you onto the program. So we have some induction sessions where you'll meet myself and you'll meet the team. We always give you an IT induction. So you'll get used to logging into Mosaic, you'll know where to find things, and we'll be able to help you if you've got any fears in the IT arena. The needs analysis and subject knowledge audit is just that starting point for you. So it's a little quiz. It gives you the opportunity to tell us what about yourself. So it might be that you have lots of experience in phonics. It might be that you've never worked with babies before, and we will use that information to plan that first half term with you. You'll notice that we do a little maths diagnostic, and that's because we have to show that we are improving fundamental skills in literacy and maths. That's a DFE requirement. So whilst you're on program, we use another online system called BKSB. Again, it's very user friendly. You take a little test and it will tell you what are your strongest areas in maths and are there any areas that you could upskill. It might be that you need to do a little bit of work on ratios, in which case it will give you some extra activities to work towards, and you've got the whole program to develop those skills. So if you're somebody who didn't enjoy maths at school, it's not your favourite subject, please don't let that put you off. We're very, very used to dealing with that, and we'll make sure that everybody, gets those skills that they need by the end of the programme. In terms of each term, you can see there's quite a lot of similarities. So you'll always have your training days, which are focused on different areas of the curriculum. You'll always be working on your learning sequences. Your learning sequences are just your planning and your activities, your assessment that you carry out in the different age groups. So, for example, when you're working in reception class in school, everybody will be focusing on phonics and mathematics. At the end of each half term, we always have a review, And that will include your personal tutor, yourself, and your mentor. And that's just to have a check-in with you, find out how you're doing, and set you some targets for the next term. And then right at the end, after the third term, we come into our recommendation period, and that's where we are now. For our cohort that started last September, we are just going into our final interviews. So at this point, that's when we'll make a summative assessment of all the evidence you've been gathering across the year, and we will say, have you mastered those early years teacher standards? If you have and you pass your final interview, we then put you forward to exam board, and that's when you would gain your status. We never like to just say goodbye when we've enjoyed working with you so much for the year. So we also complete a transition plan with you, and that will kind of support you in your first year of being an early years teacher. So there's a couple other things here about the setting mentor that you might just want to have a little think about in terms of who that might be if you're working in a setting already. There's lots and lots of evidence that shows how important this mentoring role is. So we really need that mentor to be somebody we would describe as an expert colleague. So somebody who really has that deeper knowledge of early years practice and somebody who's able to develop your skills as a teacher. We need it to be somebody that is going to challenge you, somebody that's going to give you those even better ifs, as well as lots of the positives as you're on your journey. So it might be that you want somebody who's going to support you with particular skills in a certain area. For example, it might be that the Senko is really well placed to be your mentor because that's a gap in your knowledge and you really, really want their expertise in helping you to develop that area. They do need to be able to observe you every week. So again, it needs to be somebody who has that availability. And again, they can use the employer incentive funding if they need that to be able to free them up themselves from ratio. And we want them to give you that feedback. So verbal feedback after your observation, and then to write that up and upload it to Mosaic. It's really important that they do set you SMART targets, which are going to help you to progress towards those early years teacher standards and to help you to plan your time. They should be there to really support you, make sure that you get to spend time in each age group and that you're doing okay with your work. Placements is something that we get asked lots and lots of questions about, and it is really tricky because it's quite different for each person. That being said, there are some set requirements from the DfE that we have to make sure that we meet, even if that looks slightly different in your individual scenario. So you can see on here that each one of you has to cover all of those age groups from 0 to 5. And that's a minimum requirement in order for us to award you the status. So you've got to spend some time with babies, with toddlers, in preschool, in reception, and also in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. This is to make sure that you get that real variety and that depth of experience, because even if you've worked in one setting and it's an outstanding setting, it's always really beneficial to go to a different setting and see how they do things differently. See if they have a different approach, see if their policies work in a slightly different way. So that's why there is that criteria there which says it's got to be at least 2 settings. So if you're employed in a setting already, one counts as your home setting, and then your second setting would be your placement setting. The settings also have to be good or outstanding rated by Ofsted. And the reason for that is that if you're going out and you're doing all that wonderful observation, we want you to be seeing best practice. We want you to be seeing good quality teaching. And that's why that's there as a criteria too. You'll see that there is a little note there that says some people might need 3 settings. So the easiest example I could give you there is if you currently work in a preschool, you could cover the preschool age range where you are. You need to go into school to cover reception, Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, but you'd also need a third placement because you're going to need to cover babies and toddlers to make sure you meet that minimum requirement across the 0 to 5s. So placements can look quite different. Again, we can help to support you with that and what it will look like. And you do have a little bit of flexibility in terms of when you complete those placements. The one thing we do ask is you don't complete them in blocks of less than 2 weeks. And the reason we say that is if you're going to be doing one of your learning sequences, you need to have a 2-week block where you can really get to know the children, get to know the setting, get to know the parents and the staff, gather all the information you need around assessment, and then plan your activities because you're going to have to evidence the progress that the children have made. And it's really, really difficult to do that if you pop in for a morning and then you don't go for another week. So it is at least a 2-week requirement. That's just something to bear in mind. For GE students or people that are not working in a setting, as we saw on the slide earlier, it is a minimum of 120 placement days that you've got to complete during your time on programme. And for that reason, we do say that you need to be available for at least 4 days a week. Ideally, it would be that you're available 5 days a week because then we have more time to be able to plan your placements in and also to allow you to have a break. So you can, for example, maybe have the term time holidays off and have that as an opportunity to write up some of your work. If you're a GE student, we have a placement team who will find those placements for you. Again, you can suggest ideas for us. If you're a GEB student and you're employed in a setting, the onus is on you to find your placement. But that being said, if you struggle, we've got lots of links with settings and settings that we've used previously. So we will, of course, help you if you've got any difficulty finding them in your local area. This is just a little recap on how things are assessed at the end. So you'll remember on that diagram, the summative assessment only comes in right at the end of term 3. So all the way through the programme, you're assessed by your tutor formatively. So their assessment will be based on the observations that are completed by your mentor, the observations that are completed by the tutor, any discussions that we have with you, any presentations that you complete, and your engagement on the training days. There's also one reflective account, and that's a written essay, and we mark that written essay against the level 6 criteria because early years teacher status is a level 6 qualification. We will, of course, check your progress as well on your targets and make sure that all of those are evidenced and signed off before we get to that summative stage. If you take part in all of the different things, all the different program elements, then we know that you will demonstrate that you've mastered those standards. So we never get anybody through to the point we're at now who's not going to make that status. If you were struggling, if we felt there was a significant gap in your knowledge, we would have already spoken to you and had those discussions, and we would have wanted to see particular things improved. So those conversations are ongoing and will happen in those end of term reviews. We then go to a final exam board, and that's when hopefully everybody is recommended their early years teacher status. And just to put that into perspective, we do currently have a 100% pass rate. So we are successful in supporting people to get there. And we'll make sure that we do our very best to make sure you evidence those standards and come out with your teacher status. So hopefully lots of you are sat there thinking you would love to get your early years teacher status. What do you need to do? What do you need to have? So this is the criteria in terms of you being eligible. So you do need to have a degree or an equivalent qualification at a level 6. You do need to have your GCSEs in English, maths and science. So that's a grade C on the old grading structure or a grade 4 or above on the current structure. Again, if you don't have your GCSE, please don't worry about that. Don't let it be something that puts you off because you can always take an equivalency test, or it may be that you have a recognised equivalent already. We do have to evidence that you've got the right to study and work in the UK, and we will be checking your competence in spoken and written English. So there are a few different ways that we do that. For example, in our interview, we will ask you to do a short presentation on play. And during the program, we ask you to create a presentation all about your ethos as an early years teacher, which you will present to your group, your training group. You do need to check that you have a satisfactory DBS check because, of course, we have to show that we are safe to be working with children. And for everybody, we also need to make sure that you are fit and healthy, again, and able to work with children. So we have to do a little medical questionnaire, which shows that you meet those health and physical capacity to teach requirements. We've just added this information in if anyone is in the situation that they might need to do an equivalency test. You again have the option of which provider to use for that. So there are lots of different equivalency testing companies. We do work really closely with equivalencytesting.com. Because we have lots of people that use them, we've been able to agree a little bit of a discount with them. So if you would like to use them, you can use a discount code that we can share with you, which will give it you at a slightly cheaper rate. You have two different options for doing your equivalency test, as you can see here on the screen. So if you're ready and you just want to take the course, then you can just sit your exam by booking in a date that suits you. If you feel that you're going to benefit from some revision and you need a bit longer because it's such a long time since you've done your GCSEs, then you can prepare yourself by doing a series of the homework assignments. So it's 12 homework assignments, which help you to prepare for the exam. And then when you're ready, you can book yourself in for it. We do have one other option. If it is maths, if it's your maths GCSE that you haven't got a grade C or a grade 4 in, we do offer a maths equivalency test through Best Practice Network, which is totally free. So you can complete your equivalency test with us, and that will enable you to join our course. What it doesn't necessarily guarantee is that you could use that to join a different provider in the future, but it will get you onto an ITT program with Best Practice Network. So in terms of taking the next step, if you feel you're ready, you can apply today. If you go on our website, which is bestpracticenet.co.uk, you will find all the information around EYITT in a tab at the top. And when you go onto the website, if you're ready, there's a little button which says apply now. When you click on that button, it will ask you a series of questions to just check that you've got your degree, for example, and then you'll be able to start entering your details in. So it's going to ask for some personal details first of all, and then you'll have the opportunity to upload copies or scanned copies of your qualifications. If anybody's got any questions or you're unsure about anything, you can see the email there, which will come straight through to the team. So it's EYITT@bestpracticenet.co.uk. So you might have a question around your qualification and whether or not it is valid. You might have a question around placement or who your mentor is going to be. That email is the email for all of those queries, and we will make sure that somebody gets back to you, and it might even be me, depending on what the query is. Please do follow us or have a look at us on Twitter and on Facebook. You can see the handles at the bottom there. You'll be able to see some of the things that we've been involved in recently. For example, we had Early Years Teacher Day, where we've celebrated some of the really fantastic early years teachers that we have working with us already. And that was a really nice way to recognise that fantastic work that everybody's doing. So any questions, please do use the details that you can see on the slide there. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat box and see if there's any questions in there, or Ellie may have answered them because I can see that Ellie has joined. Ellie's part of our EYITT team who picks up the email that I've just mentioned. So Jackie, you've asked about the school placement. Again, it's dependent on which route you're on. So if you are employed in a setting already, ideally, we would want you to try and find that placement first. So if you have any schools that your children transition to from your early years setting, that might be a good starting point. If you have any in your local area that you can do a little bit of research on, have a look at the Ofsted reports. We would urge you to give them a ring and see if they'd be willing to support you on a placement. If you try that and you're not getting much response or you need some more suggestions, then again, your tutor will be there to help you and to find a placement for you. I can see we've got a question about how many hours per week would be dedicated to study or assessment. Yeah, that's a really good question to ask. And again, I would say it probably looks individual for each person, depending again on your own circumstances and where you're working, for example. Um, there are some things I would say that fall into tasks you do every week. So I would say definitely do some reading each week, whether that is reading for your training day or whether that is reading for your learning sequence. I would say each week, if you're in setting, it would definitely be good to be doing something on Mosaic. So, for example, starting one of your teaching and learning plans, perhaps looking at one of the targets that's been set for you. So, definitely a little bit of time each week doing that. I would say there are some tasks that fall into like a monthly category. So every month you have a reflection, which pops up on Mosaic, and it will ask you a few questions about what you're working on at the moment, how your well-being is, have you developed your knowledge in safeguarding? So I would say I'd allow yourself maybe half an hour to kind of complete your reflection, or you could add to that as you're going on through the week. We then have deadlines in place for each of those sequences. So we space them out. There's 5 sequences to complete across the year. So by the beginning of June, we are expecting all 5 sequences to be completed. So for example, if you start in September, the first sequence is usually due around the beginning of November. And then there'll be a second date for your second sequence, just so we can try and keep you on track. The termly conversations that you have with your mentor and your personal tutor, I would say they normally last for about an hour. So that's an online session each hour. So I would say they are kind of the main tasks that you would kind of complete each week, each month, or each term. So Sarah, you're asking their required training days as well as online sessions. So roughly how many and how often? Yes. So we have a online induction session, which is normally a couple of hours. We then have 8 training days, and each training day is 10 till 4. So whether you are face to face or online, it's 10 till 4. So you have 8 training days in which you're released from your setting to come to those. And then we also have the final interview. So the final interview again is roughly about an hour, and you are given a day. So it's classed as a training day. So you've got time to prepare and join your call and have your evidence ready for that. Amelia, for the employment-based route, is it feasible to work full time? Yes, it absolutely is. So we have lots of people that are working full time and doing early years teacher status alongside it. I would say to you, it's not easy. It is a juggle. You do need to be good at organising your time, making sure that the setting are giving you that time out. So everybody is entitled to 10% study time. So that's 10% of your working hours. And that's just like it would be with a teacher having PPA time out of setting. That's to help you and support you with having that time to be able to plan or to write up the things that you need to for the course. There are lots of things, again, we can do to help with that. So we know what it feels like to work in an early years setting. We know what the challenges are like. We know how busy it can be. We know that sometimes you can plan things and then there's a member of staff off and everything has to change. So we're very used to dealing with that again. And there's lots of ways that we could support you with if you were finding it difficult. What provider network should I select when filling in the form for teacher training in the self-declaration section? Ellie, are you here? You might know better what that looks like and what the question is.
Can I just confirm whether that's referring to on our application form, if that's okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Saba, if you either want to unmute yourself, yep, it's on our application form.
So I believe what you're referring to is maybe is the partner bit, and if that's not applicable to you, then you should just be able to answer no. Um, Otherwise, there shouldn't be any other reference to it.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Sorry, I can see that I've missed one. Samra, apologies. It must have skipped past that. You're talking about your bachelor's degree and your master's degree. Yep, that is correct. So you've mentioned there the ENIC or ENIC process. We do need to do that for any international qualifications, and that is to make sure that they are comparable against the UK framework. So that is something that we do need to do. Again, if it's different qualifications for maths or English, there are different things that we can accept. We would just need to check them. So if you want to, again, apply and upload them, we can have a look at your qualifications. Or equally, if you want to send them through to the EYITT team, we can have a good look at them and we'll let you know what your next steps need to be. Thank you, Samra. That would be great. And then we can have a good look at them and we'll let you know what you need to do next. Again, just to reassure people, it may be that you're thinking, I'm not going to be ready in time for September. Please don't let that stop you applying. You can still apply. We can have a look at what you've got and we can suggest what your next steps need to be and we can help to get you ready for the next cohort. Okay, so don't let it put you off if there are things that you've got outstanding. I would say to you, so our next cohort starts in September. So it will be this year, September 25. Our next deadline in terms of applications is the 20th of July. So that's next Sunday. If you're interested, please get your application in quickly. We have filled up quite a lot of our spaces already. So I don't want you to miss out. If you're keen to start in September, please do get your application in as soon as you can. Amelia, you've just asked if there's a January cohort as well. So this year we have a February cohort who are on programme at the moment, and they will finish in January 26. The year before we had a January cohort. It's very, very likely that we will have a cohort in January or February next year. Unfortunately, we can't confirm that just yet because it does depend on the allocations of places from the DfE. That being said, because we've had that new publication this week, the Giving Every Child the Best Start in Life, the government are backing a lot of extra funded places for EYITT. So I would really, really hope that we do see an increase in those places and we're able to run that second cohort. We will let you know about that as soon as we can. So as soon as we know, we'll get that out on social media. Keep an eye on our website. And if you have your application in, then again, Ellie's team will email to let you know that that is an option once we can confirm it. Okay. I don't think I can see any other questions. So if anybody has anything that they want to follow up with us afterwards, I'll just flick back to the previous slide. If you want to note down the email, which is eyitt@bestpracticenet.co.uk, then please do get in touch with us and we'll be really, really happy to help you. So thank you for all joining tonight. I hope it's been useful and hopefully we'll hear from you soon. Thank you very much, everyone.